everybody, and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch and review and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I am Chris, back again with Patrick.
Hello.
And Steven.
Hey.
And we're here today taking a break from the worst movies ever made to see how we feel about the recent classic Raw.
A film in which the Joker does not appear.
The Joker does not appear for a change, but we're going to talk about that after we catch up on what else, if anything, we've been watching, consuming, doing, reading, viewing that is horror related. So what you guys been up to?
I got a couple of really quick things. I always say it's going to be really quick, and then it's not, but I mean it this time. A plug for the Amon Book Club. We are reading Chelsea G. Summers' A Certain Hunger, and we'll be discussing it sometime middle to late March. I think Patrick is joining in on this one as well. And so far, there's some promising comments on the Amon Discord in the Stevens Book Club channel. And I watched a documentary over the weekend, just kind of randomly. This is put out by Vinegar Syndrome. It's called Mail Order Murder, the story of Wave Productions. And it's about this tiny New Jersey film company, you know, kind of Roger Corman or Troma-esque, and they make movies to order. So like whatever your twisted fantasy is, they'll do it for you with whatever you can afford, which tends to be not a lot of money. You got to finance it yourself. But it was kind of a fun little diversion. I love a passion project. They've made over 400 movies doing this over the past 30 years. And it's kind of inspiring. Makes me feel like, you know, maybe I could get in the business someday too.
That sounds really cool. Pretty soon, though, we're just going to have AI doing this shit. This is my worst fear. You're going to not even have Netflix anymore. You're going to sit down and you're going to be like, I want to watch a courtroom thriller with Mark Ruffalo and Renee Zellweger. And it'll come on and it'll play. And then you're like, actually, you know what? I don't like Mark Ruffalo. Let's do Chris Evans instead. And then you're going to get him instead halfway through the movie. And you're going to be like, can I see this? But like it was done by Martin Scorsese, and then boom, it's there. And who would want to watch anything that anyone makes when you can just, it's like the news. Why would you want to read the news when you can just read your own opinion and regurgitate it back to you?
Well, listen to Philip K. Dick over here, back from beyond the grave. I will say,
don't call me a dick.
That's for later in the show. Oh, I'll say quickly, Mail Order Murder, the story of Wave Productions. I didn't buy it from Vinegar Syndrome. It's on Tubi, like everything good. Patrick, have you watched or read anything horrific lately?
Oh man, I've been cranking lately. I don't think we've talked about The Last of Us yet on the show, which, I mean, there's been plenty of discourse online, but I'll just say I've been enjoying it very much. I think it's more than justified doing a series. It's both very faithful to the game, but also is built upon that really wonderful story in impressive ways. And it actually inspired me to finally go back and play the little DLC from the original Last of Us game, Left Behind, which I had never actually played, and which was adapted in the show recently in episode 6, I think. And it was a delight to get back into that world, depressing as it is. So that was good. I saw Knock at the Cabin, which was oh boy, exactly, is all we can say about Knock at the Cabin. We love Bautista, but what a betrayal of the basic theme and point of the novel. Good Lord.
Yeah, maybe that was the twist.
What?
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan seems to have like pure contempt for the source material, the way that he fucked that ending up.
Yeah, or just a basic non-comprehension of it in the first place. It's just, it's wild choices, and I'm glad Paul Tremblay is pulling no punches about his feelings about it on the ostensible press circuit for that. Saw Skinamarink, which obviously has also already been discussed at length on the show. And I'm just going to say I'm team #fuck Skinamarink. We had a long text conversation about this the other night with Allison with an I and Allison with a Y, who I saw it with. But man, I thought that was fucking dull, redeemed by only a moment or two. And I finally saw the original Leprechaun for the first time in preparation for a little something I'm cooking up with our friends over at It Slays podcast. You'll be hearing more about that soon, but very relevant to the holiday of my patron saint namesake. So I'm going to cruise through that franchise a little bit in the next couple weeks as well.
If you're doing a full franchise rundown, I want to be there. I am an unapologetic Lep stan.
Oh,
I watch
amazing.
A couple of those every year.
I will hit you up when I move along to Lep 2 and 3. We'll see if I go further than that, but with your encouragement, I might get there.
I believe in you.
Chris, how about you?
I have not watched or read or consumed anything horror related since we last spoke. So I get a 0 for the week.
You fail.
All I did was watch Raw. And I gotta say right off the bat, shocked by the homophobia in this.
Did you not pick up on that the first time around? Or did you forget?
I don't know.
Okay.
But just joke after joke after joke.
Yeah. There's a lot of non-PC stuff in this.
I'm sorry. I was not expecting you to.
I was going to say this is a bit, right? As soon as he said this, I rolled my eyes because I was like, he's doing a bit. I know there's a punchline coming.
Patrick saw the bit and he's like, I'm not engaging. And then Steven agreed with me, so the bit just blew up on the launch pad. Let me do it let me do it the way I thought this was going to go. Okay. I say I'm shocked I'm shocked by the homophobia. And you're like, what are you talking about? Is this a homophobic movie? And I'd be like, yeah, just the things he says right out the gate are just horrible. And you'd be like, who? And I'd be like, oh, fuck me, guys. I accidentally watched Eddie Murphy Raw.
Oh my god.
I mean, okay. Wow. You fooled me though. There were some weird moments in this movie involving homosexuality that I don't quite know how I feel about.
Okay,
right.
All right.
That's a good bit. That's a good bit.
Apparently not, but I think when you explain the explosion of the bit was more impactful than the bit. It's like the Hindenburg. Like no one would have remembered it if he had just gotten to his destination safely.
So essentially, you're giving yourself credit for being the Joaquin Phoenix Joker walking out in this episode.
Yeah. But no, that's interesting that you thought I couldn't tell if it was homophobic or not, but we can talk about it.
But I don't think it's homophobic. I agree with Steven that there are certainly some questionable things about portrayals of the gay character. I wouldn't say homophobic. Certainly not as much as Titan comes off as transphobic, but that's a different movie and a different discussion.
But
I forgot you saw Titan. Okay, so I'm glad we get to talk about that a little bit tonight too.
It's the same director. It's Julia Ducournau. A French.
Speak it.
I'm trying to make it French. We had a little conversation about how to pronounce this, and they were like Ducournau, and I was like, that's not very interesting, is it? If I'm speaking French, I want to say Ducournau.
It's actually Waszychowska.
Okay.
Oh, that was good.
So this is the 2016 film, which I remember when this came out, and I saw it, I don't know, I didn't see it right when it came out, but not long afterwards, because I remember this movie really getting universal acclaim when it came out. It was like if you were anybody in the horror fandom, you had to go out and see Raw at the art theater if you could. It was the new thing. And it's about a young woman who is headed off to veterinary school where her sister is already a student, and she immediately becomes caught up in the sort of hazing culture of the veterinary school, which is pretty wild. I'm sure we'll talk about the details later. And she's a strict vegetarian from a vegetarian family. And as part of her hazing at the veterinary school, she eats a rabbit kidney at the prodding, I suppose, of her sister, who's already gone through the hazing process and is accepted in the higher levels of the school. And soon after she does that, interesting things start happening to her body and her mind and her soul, and she just kind of becomes insatiable for flesh, for meat, the forbidden fruit. And that's your movie.
And it's all about vegetarianism.
It's
all
not.
Of it.
It's not. Steven and I had a disagreement before we rewatched, and I don't know if any of you took anything out of this movie upon rewatch, but as a vegetarian, even on rewatch, I said, no, this movie features a vegetarian, but it's a metaphor for completely different things. This movie's not about vegetarianism.
Not at all. It was some light trolling, but also I won't shut the fuck up about Bones and All. And I confused, because I hadn't seen Raw in like a couple of years. I didn't remember it super well. And I confused something that the author of the book said about Bones and All, about vegetarianism, that was confusing. I conflated it with this movie. So yeah, I'll take the L for that.
So Patrick, this was your first time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess maybe I should ask Steven first, sort of what your prior experiences with this and your feelings about it coming into this movie.
Fine, Chris, just dangle the raw chicken breast in front of me and yank it away.
I mean, this is a movie that I saw it, God, maybe it has been within the past year. Time is strange. Chris has been urging me to see it for a while. The film community, the horror community has been urging me to see it, since it came out. And it just, I don't know. It didn't appeal to me. I don't typically like movies about cannibalism. I had no doubt that like every, critic worth their salt was right, that this was going to be a fascinating movie at the very least. But the content of it really kind of scared me off. I heard all these stories about people puking in the theater and fainting, and thought, I'll get to it when I get to it. And I had a fabulous experience the first time watching it. I had an old friend over I haven't seen in a while, and was especially happy to have like someone to grab onto during certain moments of this film that are particularly gruesome. And yeah, I don't know, without reviewing it, I'll just say I had a very positive experience the first time around.
So Patrick, what the hell took you so long, and what were your preconceptions going in?
What the hell took me so long? I don't know. It's like fucking everything else. Every case in point on this podcast, every 2 weeks during Horror Catch Up, generally at least once I say, I'll have to put that on my list. Every time I talk to Steven, I say, I'll have to put that on my list at least 2 or 3 times. It's just the never-ending queue. And my preconception, basically I just heard it was gross. I knew it had to do with eating meat. And that was all I really knew, I think.
I think,
frankly, I didn't realize it was the director of Titan. Also, I don't think I even realized this was French. I think I was surprised when it wasn't in English when it started. So that's how little I knew.
I think the first time I went in maybe with the wrong expectations, because I had heard some of the same stuff as Steven and was expecting something that was like super dark and disturbing and disgusting, and like I think I kind of went into it with that lens. And I missed what I appreciated this time around as the comedy in this movie.
Yeah.
This is a very light and funny movie for the most part, despite being gross. Like it reminded me of like Lady Bird for the most part, or something like that. It is gross. It's all of those things. It is dark at times. It is disturbing at times, but I think there's a levity that goes through it where just even subtle things made me laugh a little bit. Like they're in veterinary school, but like everything looks like a slaughterhouse. They're going to class and it looks like a trap from Saw. They go party and they're in like the club from Hitman Contracts and the slaughterhouse. That's a deep cut for my Hitman fans out there. But like it's just
the club from Blade, man. It's like the club from Blade.
Oh yeah, the Hitman stole it from Blade, I'm sure. So that's a better reference. And they're sitting in class with like their lab coats covered in blood from their hazing, and nobody says anything about it. It's all kind of dryly funny. And I missed that the first time around, and I felt like an idiot for missing it the first time around.
Humor, you're saying?
Yes.
That's interesting. I didn't read it as necessarily that humorous, but also it was my first time. I was also kind of, I guess, underwhelmed by the, again, that reputation that it's so gross. Although I feel like I have this reaction to every fucking film that has that reputation of being so gross. People were fainting in the theater. People were puking in the fucking popcorn bucket, Like, I mean, it is gross. I will give it that. It has some moments. It has some moments that made me go, like I had a full like face cringe, which doesn't often happen for me. But I don't know. And this is probably just an irrelevant like side tangent, but anytime somebody tells me something is the grossest or scariest thing that they've ever seen, the visions my brain comes up with for the grossest or scariest thing that I'm going to see is inevitably so much worse than whatever I actually see. in comparison to sort of like what my expectations, this almost seemed tame.
But like Skinamarink.
Well, what's funny is this movie was marketed that way, you know? Like, that's one way to sell a horror movie, and yet the director seems to reject that read. She doesn't think there's anything... She doesn't like when people say that anything in this film is shocking. She hates that word, which I find interesting. I think it's because she... you know, assumes her audience to be smarter than, you know, the average person who's going to go out to see a movie that, you know, provides a barf bag upon entry or whatever. And that there may be moments where something, you know, quote unquote shocking happens, but like, that's not really the focus. She's more focused on, you know, developing the characters through these images and sequences. I don't know. I still can't fully wrap my brain around that distinction she makes.
Yeah. I'd be interested to read more of her thoughts about that. I was blown away by, I mean, there's not a bad performance in this movie, but I was blown away, especially by the performance of the lead. I was just like, this is a hell of a tightrope to walk, especially with the evolution that this character goes on. She conveys so much and creates such an engaging and endearing character. I was just like, how did this woman not blow the fuck up after this movie? And she hasn't even really been in much of anything else, but she's outstanding.
Wasn't she in Titan?
She is, yeah. But she hasn't been in a whole lot since this, which came out, you know what, I think 7 years ago.
It's crazy.
Well, she's worked with this director a lot. Like, I think the first movie she did with the director, the actress was 12. And then she did, I think there were 2 shorts. Then she did another one at like 14, and then this, and then Titan. I don't know, maybe their working relationship is just so close that they're not really considering outside opportunities.
Yeah, perhaps.
When I get my AI device, I'm going to say, put Garancé Millier in every movie. In every movie. And Siri will say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
No, she's incredible, and like, she really does kind of have to carry the movie. She makes a lot of interesting acting choices because her character is kind of shy and unsure of herself. So there's a lot of sort of facial tics and things. Also, I mean, this is going to go over your guys' head, but maybe a couple of our listeners will care. She looks strikingly like Isabelle Adjani, specifically in Possession. And she even wears that blue dress that she wears. I am 99% positive is a nod to Possession. And I'm still kind of unpacking, like, I don't think that's just a purely formal reference. Like, I think that, like, a fan of Possession like myself should be able to read something smarter into that. And I haven't figured it quite out yet. But yeah, she's such a great actress.
There's a lot to unpack in this movie, and I am not smart enough to have done it after 2 viewings and so close to my second viewing. I'm sure we'll try to break down the themes later on, but it's refreshing to watch a movie on this show that has some intention behind. I mean, we've watched a lot of movies that have intention behind them, but like a movie that really you can kind of think about and turn around in your head and study and be like, why is that shot there? Why is that scene there? Why is that music drop there? Rather than just, you know, what we typically watch. Not to throw too much shade on those other filmmakers out there, but it was really nice to be intellectually stimulated like this. And it looks great. The cinematography is very good.
Oh, yeah.
What can you say?
My takeaway about the director so far, having only seen, well, she's only made 2 feature films. She's done some shorts and some TV work, actually on The Servant, M. Night Shyamalan's show. I just learned that today. I'm going to have to finally check that out. Both films, Titan and Raw, are like so sensual in the way that they're directed and performed and written that, like, to talk about specific plot beats almost might sound like nonsense to someone who hasn't seen the film. Like, it really is, like, they're very much movies that are more about like what you're feeling than what you're witnessing at times. Would you guys agree with that?
I think this is a lot more straightforward than Titan. Titan is a lot more of just like a vibes movie, an aesthetic movie, a shock movie. This is a more straightforward narrative. There's a lot less what the fuck is going on right now. I mean, there's what the fuck is going on right now in this, but it's generally you more or less understand the context and what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's that, but there's also like, what does this mean, or like, what does this signify?
Sure.
And like, I haven't, like, there's some maybe obvious things going on here, and that like this is sort of like a coming of age story. This is a young woman coming into her own. There's a lot of interesting stuff about family going on in it. Some of which we definitely can't get to until the spoiler room. But I'm still trying to figure out, like, I know what I felt while I was watching it, but I don't know what it means.
I'm between you two on this. I think it has a pretty straightforward plot, but I didn't think the plot was all that compelling or sensical to me. And where the movie really captured me was in sort of the interstitial moments, such as like when she's watching her roommate playing soccer or whatever with no shirt on.
Yeah.
and she's just like staring at his body, and it's kind of playing, you go on a little mental journey with her, and you're like, oh, what does, and it all ties into theme and evokes a strong feeling. And I think the movie's I think the plot is coherent. I haven't seen Titan, so I don't know. But I think the plot is pretty conventional, but uninteresting compared to the feelings it evokes when it's not progressing the story.
Right, there's a lot of kind of jumping around in this. I mean, I think most of this takes place over like a week, right? Or like a condensed period of time. And there's a lot of just like, where are we? When are we? It's just a lot of just kind of nice observational moments strung together in a way that doesn't seem plotty. It's more of a hang, I feel like.
I thought this had a ton of momentum to it and felt kind of like your standard coming of age movie, just elevated with some, sensational moments that you wouldn't find in your standard girl going to college for the first time sort of story. To me, it felt... I mean, it definitely has the feel of an art film, I guess. It looks great. There's a lot going on theme-wise and symbolically, but it feels still like something that, your Joe the Plumber Netflix watcher could pull up, and as long as they could deal with reading subtitles, would find this pretty entertaining and gripping.
I can meet you halfway on that, but there's not like... I don't know, there's not like a big climax that we're waiting for necessarily. It's not like this is like all building up to a big party. Like parties happen, but they just kind of happen, and we see, how she behaves in them based on things that have happened to her that she's experienced. But it's not like traditional in any sense where there's like an A to B to C going on. And like when it ended, I was like kind of stunned both times too. Like, oh, okay, wow, we're out of there.
I mean, the coming of age genre is not known for being like that plotty. When I like I said, this movie reminded me a lot of Lady Bird for some reason. Like movies like that sort of built around vignettes, and yes, there's a story, but it's not like, there's not, the problem in the movie is like, here's a girl dealing with feelings and has to come of age. It's not like someone stole the Infinity Stone or something like that, and you gotta chase him and then fight him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm thinking of more like mainstream Hollywood, like high school movies, or or even like Jennifer's Body or something like that. Like this is a far cry for this is more of a, to use like a $10 word, it's a Bildungsroman, where it's just like. We're seeing a character grow a certain amount in a certain period of time.
But I think it's accessible enough, especially for people who are titillated by gore and things like that, or titillated by sex for that matter.
There's plenty of both of those.
I think it holds interest to people. I think it's more an art film than not, but I think it holds interest and tells a story that non-artsy people like. I still wish I were, can connect to it.
You wish you were
and it moves swiftly. It's not
person?
I long for the days when I was just content to say the best movie ever made is Shooter. And if you think differently, you're pretentious.
I remember those days well.
I actually didn't know until just now that those days had ended.
Well, I try to. I refuse to progress.
Well, I mean, I think we can certainly actually dig further into the movie's homophobia or lack thereof, because they're outside of our main character. Justine, is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah. Another of the prominent characters is Adrian, her roommate, who is gay. Yeah. Thoughts? I mean, Chris, obviously you don't think there's homophobia. Stephen, what were your thoughts?
I don't even think there's homophobia in it, but it's just odd. It is very odd that she, and I guess it's odd just because like I admire this director for like going there, but like Justine cannot control her desire, even though the object of her desire is a gay man. But yeah, it is just a little odd, and like as a gay man watching it and like knowing like where their relationship kind of goes, I was just sort of like, I don't know, is this pushing it too far? Is it not? Is this maybe more common than I realize?
Well, it's prominent and kind of weird enough that I don't know if I found it homophobic, but if either of you guys were like, this is homophobic, I'd be like, oh yeah. And so maybe that's just what I did to you.
I didn't find it homophobic, but I was baffled, of course, by them hooking up. I literally, this is one of those moments where...
minor spoiler, but it's all right. You can still appreciate the film without it.
Sure. We talk sometimes about these moments where it's like, I can't believe what I just saw. Like, I ran the movie back to see, you know, did she really throw him out the window or whatever? And in this case, it was just them having sex. But I was like, wait, what the fuck did I miss? Why are they suddenly having... I mean, he has assertively said, like, I'm gay, you know, like, I'm not interested in girls. And they have, like, an intense sex scene. Like, he appears to be very into it and passionate as well, and I did not understand where the fuck that came from.
I really liked the line. It was one of my favorite lines in the movie earlier on when he's like, I wasn't in the closet for 20 years to fuck girls.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to bring that up too. And it's like, he seems very... Who knows what his internal life is like. I don't know if we spent enough time with that, but like, he seems pretty confident in his sexuality. We see him making out with a dude pretty early on in the movie. He's not getting, you know, harassed or hazed any more than anyone else is.
Well, and he's literally sitting there jerking off to gay porn when she comes in to fuck him.
That's right.
I don't know. That was... Most of this feels... I feel there has to be some intention behind that whole bit. There has to be something thematic, symbolic to all of that. I did not get it. In general, this movie pretty much made sense to me. I feel like I understand what the movie is about. That did not make a goddamn bit of sense to me.
All right. So I'm going to tell you my little read on it, which is just kind of off the cuff. And if you believe me, then maybe you could say, oh, it's homophobic. But I think the whole movie is about not exactly repressed desire, but it's about, I think, transcending the boundaries you put up around yourself for your hedonistic pleasures and animalistic vices. Maybe. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is a guy who you see engaging in sex and hedonism and everything on his terms, but even he ends up experimenting in ways that he didn't expect to. That's the best I can do to explain it.
That's completely different from my thematic read, so I'm looking forward to digging deeper into that in the spoiler room.
Well, I should know, I've deliberately not researched this movie. I haven't listened to anything by Julia Ducournau, and I probably won't for some time. I just want to kind of kick it around in my head until I decide it's about 9/11, and then be disappointed when I look at the answer key. So
yeah, I don't even know what
I mean, there were two towers in that video that he was watching.
Damn.
Wow. No, she's an interesting filmmaker. The first time I watched this movie, I watched a few interviews with her and found her to be kind of frustrating, but she is very passionate. maybe a little on the pretentious side. And I think I'm starting to kind of warm up to her, but she does seem very contrarian. Whatever you think her movie's about, it's suddenly not about that. And she thinks you're an idiot for thinking that.
Well, I probably am. Didn't she do a piece for Cabinet of Curiosities?
I thought so too, and I didn't look it back.
I don't think so. I was just.
Did you guys watch
credits.
all of that?
I never finished it, actually. I never got to the episodes that I really wanted to see.
Not her. How could I do Jennifer Kent that way? It was Jennifer Kent.
Oh, another woman. Chris.
Another genius of horror cinema who happens to be a woman.
I think somebody from the cast or something was in it, because I swear I saw an image of Titan in like a Bloody Disgusting article about Cabinet, but not the director.
I kind of want to reappraise Julia Ducournau now, because I heard about stuff about Titan and it just did not sound interesting to me. The Cronenberg comparisons rubbed me the wrong way. It sounded like she's an edgelord. And then like I said, my initial impression of Raw, I liked Raw when I saw it the first time, but it didn't blow me away. I thought it was kind of too edgy too, and it was kind of more gross over substance. But now I'm like, I think I see the softer notes of Raw, and I kind of want to see Titan and see what else this lady wants to show me.
Titan is a really tender movie, but it's also like, I walked away from it thinking like, okay, that felt tender in a way I didn't expect, but also more fucked up than I expected in an odd way too. Like the central relationship in that movie is something I still think about regularly and am still turning over in my head.
Huh.
Tender. The whole weird father-son, but it's not really his son thing.
Tender is not a word I would ever associate with that movie. I love how differently we're clearly processing her works. I mean, not that we're rarely on the same page, the three of us to begin with, but I'm intrigued by how all over the place we are with her. Titan is some fucked up shit, and I would be very curious to hear your take on it as well, Chris, and discuss that on an episode where we're not discussing a different movie.
It is, but then there's like a last thing I'll say about Titan, probably on the episode, but like one of my favorite scenes in that movie is, do you remember when the firemen are at the firehouse and they're all just like dancing? It's this like wonderful positive portrayal of like healthy male friendship and sexuality. Like it seems completely random in the context of the movie, but I found it oddly moving, and it's stuck with me. And I don't know if that's just her trying to connect a bunch of series of images that are going to push your buttons, and every once in a while she happens to, do something that's not super fucked up and offensive, but it worked for me, whatever she was trying to do.
I mean, I like Titan a lot. It just struck me as primarily a shock value type of movie that I don't understand. Again, like, I feel like I understand the point of Raw. I don't feel like I understood what the hell was going on in Titan thematically, other than just shock value, and again, some probably accidental transphobia. A lot of accidental transphobia.
I prefer my transphobia to be deliberate. All right. Well, why don't we review it and then go to the spoiler room where we can unpack it a bit more.
Yeah.
Sure.
I feel like we're spinning our wheels, not really able to fully talk about this thing.
We're spinning our wheels like that car that she fucks into Titan.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that another Titan reference? I haven't seen it. Steven, you already told us, I think, your review, so why don't you tell us again what you thought of this movie?
I think it's a masterpiece in that, like, it's a beautifully directed and acted, constructed film all around, and I've seen it twice now, and both times I feel like I've peeled back additional layers. I've had a different emotional experience with it both times, and for a movie that sounds so off-putting on paper, I'm surprised to say that, like, I will be revisiting this every few years throughout the rest of my life, probably. I think it's just such a striking and unique film that there's a lot you can pull out of, and I don't even think there's any right or wrong answer to some of it. It feels simultaneously kind of personal, but also universal in a way that isn't pandering. Yeah. Patrick, what did you think?
I'm right there on the same page with you. This was definitely a view it for me.
Did I say view it? I didn't say it was.
I don't think you gave
it was a masterpiece. Yeah, okay, it's a view it. Double view it. Sorry, go ahead.
That's a new category: view it, cue it, skew it, or skew it or masterpiece. Skew it. Why do I keep saying skew instead of screw it?
There's no sense in making that rating because it's never going to be used again.
Right.
No, I thought this was really beautifully done. Kind of like I said before, I think it works more or less either as just a kind of your standard narrative gross out horror film, but obviously there's, I think, a lot going on thematically that we've been attempting to articulate without really getting into it for the last however long. And it is, I feel, probably almost like endlessly discussable on that level. You know, as Steven said, there may not be right answers. Clearly the director, from what y'all were saying, is a bit contrarian as far as shooting down any attempt at interpreting the movie. And I don't know, those are some of the most interesting films, is where there is a lot going on thematically, symbolically, and yet also, you know, the three of us or any other group of people can sit down and have multiple different takes on it and unpack it sort of endlessly. Yeah, it was really fascinating. Glad I finally got around to seeing it. Chris?
Oh, it's a view it from me. There's not a lot I didn't like about this film, except that I feel like I'm too dumb to receive it on all the levels it's trying to communicate with. But I don't know. Also, we can talk about it more, but maybe it's just a movie about certain feelings and it doesn't have a grand thesis that it's trying to present to you. It doesn't have a message. Who knows?
That's where I'm leaning.
It's very French, very appropriate.
But yeah, you should definitely see it if you haven't and think about it. All right. Well, we're going to go to the spoiler room, spoiler slaughterhouse or something, spoiler veterinary school.
But before we go there, we'll remind you, as always, to go to our website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. Actually, should we even tell people to go to the website anymore? There's nothing worthwhile there anymore. Just forget about the website.
It's a dead end. You're going to fix it before Thursday?
We're going to fix it. Well, we're going to fix it. We're going to have a backlog of episodes telling people to go. And it's like, if you're listening to this episode, which is, it's now February 2023, if you listen to it and it's 2025, go to the website and see if it's fixed. It's an interactive podcast.
I like that little time capsule you just dropped in.
You can, however, still access our merch store, which is located on an entirely different URL from our website proper. Go to tpublic.com/AmonCast. That's Amon, EHMON cast, as in every horror movie on Netflix, and tpublic.com, T as in t-shirt, TEE public.com. If you want to buy a t-shirt or some other piece of merch with every horror movie on Netflix art on it. You can also join us on the Discord, which Steven mentioned before. It's a really lovely community where we have delightful conversations about the movies that we watch on the show, as well as all kinds of other horror stuff, including the books that Steven selects each month for the book club. And there'll be a link to that in the show notes. Follow us on social media. We're at AmonCast, again, EHMONcast, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We love to hear from you on there, as well as the Discord. And lastly, if you're enjoying the show, head to your podcast provider of choice, leave us a review. We'd love to hear the feedback, and it helps people find the show.
Well said. All right. Well, if you want to go check out Raw for yourself and think about it in your own brain before you let us indoctrinate you into the way we interpreted the themes, go do that now. Otherwise, stick around for about 10 or 12 seconds, and we're going to go to the spoiler room and spoil everything. Welcome back. We're here in the spoiler room, ready to spoil everything about Raw. And I kind of feel like we should have done more plot synopsis so people know what the fuck we're talking about when we start talking about the themes. But all the stuff that connects to theme is so deep in the weeds in the plot that I feel like it's just going to be Like, there's so many scenes that are inconsequential to the plot, but consequential to the theme, in my opinion, that I just don't know how to go about doing that. But we could try to give you the broad strokes, I suppose.
You want to try?
The plot synopsis?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
But, so we already told you she becomes ravenous. And long story short, she's has a craving for flesh. She's like stealing hamburgers from the cafeteria, and she's ashamed. She doesn't want people to see that she's doing it. And when she's caught, she's disgusted and she throws them away. Her body undergoes weird changes. She gets a rash, a horrible rash. I'm sure we're going to talk about the rash. She gets a rash on her body. She starts coughing up long strings of hair, like hairballs that are like impossibly long. It's much body horror indeed. It's almost like The Fly. And
that's a really good comparison. Yeah.
And she ends up she's exposed in a viral video. Well, actually, no. Well, first of all, the other thing is she finds out that her older sister, she's got the hunger too, and her older sister sort of indulges her interest in meat to the point of taking her on a little field trip where she goes out into the country and jumps in front of passing cars so that they swerve out of the way and hit a tree, and the drivers and passengers are mortally injured so she can snack on them.
Well, yeah,
right.
And
which is the first shot of the movie too, but we don't know until late in the game what was really going on there.
Yeah, let's stop along the way here. I don't think there's a need to summarize the entire plot at once, but okay, yeah, let's talk about the fucking rash, because that was the first big moment where I was like, ugh. Body horror, but I think body horror is probably, body horror probably gets to me more than any kind of horror. It's up there with a good paranormal type of thing. Paranormal can fuck with me too, but body horror fucks with me. And I've seen some rashes before, but there was just something about this one. I think actually it was the intensity with which she was scratching it, more so than the appearance of the rash itself. Just like she's scratching herself in bed. She finally like lifts up her shirt and sees the rash that she's been scratching, is horrified by that. And then she has that moment. We've all had this moment when you're itchy and you like see the thing and you're like, I shouldn't scratch it, but I have to as hard as I fucking can. And Jesus fucking Christ, does she scratch it hard. The intensity of that and the sound design of that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Horrifying and perfect. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. I've had nightmares like that where I'm like in the dream, like, oh my God, I can't stop scratching, but am I like permanently scarring my body by doing this?
Tell them what you were just telling me about Julia Ducournau's parents.
Oh yeah, we've got, let me actually check. I forget which was which. Yes, I just learned on Wikipedia actually that she was born to a gynecologist mother and dermatologist father, which I think explains a lot.
That's your movie.
That's your movie. God damn it.
That's your movie. That explains everything. It's like that clip of them asking Spielberg about why they talk to the aliens in Close Encounters with music and computers. Because his dad was a computer scientist and his mom was a music teacher or something. And fucking Inside the Actor's Studio guy asked Spielberg about this, and Spielberg was like shook. He was like, "Fuck me, I never realized that. I gotta go."
That's this rash. This rash starts fucking peeling like a sunburn, which was also horrifying. She goes to the doctor. The doctor's like tweezing chunks of her dried up skin off of her as she writhes in pain. It's
and none of this is really explained, I don't think. And like, is it because she ate meat? Is it because she's not eating enough meat? It's kind of never explained. Along with the hair, it's just like she has these physical.
Well, the hair is she was chewing on her hair.
Well, right.
Yeah,
but she shouldn't reasonably cough up that much hair, but I think it's related to her chewing on her own hair.
But I've heard that does happen to women. I think mostly like like younger, like teenage girls that have long hair and have like an anxiety tick and chew on it, but definitely not like that. Like they look like something out of like one of the It movies or something. Like 10 feet of hair coming out of her throat.
Yeah.
But the rash, I think, I mean, that's after she eats the rabbit kidney, right? That's the first, because she accidentally almost eats a piece of meat toward the beginning of the movie when she's having breakfast with her family, but she doesn't ingest it. And that may be the first time she's ever had meat, because her parents are also vegetarian and would never allow it.
Her mom, I think significantly, is much more distressed about this meatball being in her mashed potatoes than she is, and goes off and complains to the kitchen.
Yeah, and she says, like it is a big deal. What if you'd been allergic? You know, and she makes a big fuss about it. Well, now we know.
I'm not sure that it mattered to me, and I'm not sure it matters in general why the rash happens. I honestly didn't even really think about it. I think I just assumed it was because she had eaten the meat, but I don't know how much it matters.
It's more about the transformation, I think. The physical transformation, like going back to what Chris was saying about The Fly or any number of other Cronenberg movies.
I think maybe I'll deliver the theme at my thematic read in piecemeal here. I think this is a puberty movie, sort of. And we've seen, you know, puberty metaphors and puberty movies, and the only one I can think of right now is Spider-Man, but it's embarrassing. But you know, I think the puberty metaphor is well trodden, but I think there's a second puberty where once you develop your, you know, sexual characteristics at age 13 or whatever, there's an age where you start actually doing things with those characteristics and indulging in sex and drugs or alcohol or all the things that make you an adult beyond your physical characteristics that you get when you're a kid. And I think that's basically
do all the things that make you cool.
About. Yeah, you do all the things that make you not just an adult, but a cool bro. And I think that's what's going on here. And so I think that the physical stuff speaks to that.
So, I mean, I think we may as well all start unpacking the thematic reads, but I mean, mine is not far from that, but I think it's more about social pressures, which are certainly associated with that puberty kind of stage and that young adulthood when you're figuring out who you are as a person. But this girl shows up at this school and is immediately aggressively pressured by everyone, including her own sister, who pressures her perhaps most aggressively of all to fit into this culture. And we just talked about the doctor scene, and there's that interesting story the doctor tells about, what is it? There was a fat girl who needed to have her blood drawn, I think the doctor's talking about.
Yeah.
And no one would draw this girl's blood. They were being dicks about it, saying that they couldn't find a vein when they certainly could have. They were just being dicks about her being fat. And the doctor, you know, mentions the fact that the girl never complained about this. You know, Justine's like, well, why didn't she say something? And the doctor says, I think she just wanted to be average. The doctor's also smoking a cigarette.
The entire time.
In the exam room. Yeah.
So French.
Well, and I also wondered if there was intention behind that. I
that comes up a couple of times in here, too. There's a smoking scene between Justine, I'm already forgetting names, and her father, too, during a pivotal moment.
Oh, that's right.
Is this a French thing, or is this really about something more? I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like more than anything, it's about how we get indoctrinated into culture, essentially, and how that's passed down and enforced over generations.
Yeah, I think that's a smart read, and I mean, that's kind of where I was leaning, or have been leaning since this most recent viewing too, just because of, we begin pretty early on with like the most hardcore hazing you've ever seen, and it escalates and is reinforced throughout the entire film.
They break into her room on like night one like ISIS. They're all wearing balaclavas and they're like, let's go, time to wake up, blah, blah.
Throwing the beds out the window.
I would have tried to fight them all like Arkham Asylum at the same time if they came into my room. Like, I was watching this when I was really tired, okay? So like that was especially upsetting upsetting to me.
Yeah, there's so many insane hazing rituals, like the beds being repeated, the mattresses being repeatedly thrown out the window. Obviously, the pivotal rabbit kidney eating bit. There's a whole thing where they coat people in blue and yellow paint and like send them into a room to fuck or do something that would result in both of them being green when they come out.
And blood. They have blood dumped on. I don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah, during like a class photo. And it's also clearly shown early on, and obviously this becomes much more relevant later, that this is just common practice at this school and has been for a long time, because the two sisters see pictures of the classes over the years covered in blood for this photo op, including their own parents back in the day. We see, and people are ostracized, like literally cut out of these photos if they fail to follow through on the rituals. Like it's just this like insidious machine that's been churning for decades at this school. You follow the fucking insane hazing rituals or you're out, you know?
And as you pointed out too, like it's a cycle within their own family as well, because their parents went to the same school. So like that runs deep, and presumably their parents know what they might be in for and don't really do anything about it. They're pretty terrible parents. Like, I think the right thing to do is if you're a family of cannibals, well, the father isn't, right?
Well, that's the big spoiler of the movie. That's the big shocking twist ending, and various things happen before we get there. But ultimately at the end, our hero sits down with her dad, and at this point, I guess we can say that the older sister is in prison because she ate the gay roommate Adrian, and so the whole family's kind of reeling from that. Our hero is talking to her dad at the breakfast table, and he kind of matter of fact is like, well, yep, so your sister likes, she's got the munchies, and I can tell you got the munchies, and let me tell you, my, there's ways to deal with that, because it turns out mom has the munchies, and this is all passed on to the kids through the mother, and the way they found to deal with it is the father opens his shirt, and he's all scarred up because the wife just munches a little bit as a treat every night, maybe. That's how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they survive.
Cats can have a little salami.
Yeah, the cat can have a little salami. And it's kind of revealed in a way that's, I don't know, a little punchliney for me, but like I said, it's a pretty light and kind of comic movie, I think, throughout.
And yeah, weirdly almost kind of comic ending. I don't know, like the way that, I don't know how to feel about it still 2 times through, but I fucking love that we're just done after that conversation, after he opens up his shirt and says, I think he says, you'll find a solution.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right when you say it's about family, and why did you say that, Stephen?
Because we spend a lot of time with the sisterly bond, for one, between these two. There's the detail that we've mentioned a couple times about how the family, how they've all been through this. Like the father had his lip, ripped apart the first night that he met the mother in college, right? They've all been through this, but there's like a failure. There's this interesting, like, kind of failure to deal with the problem or to communicate about it. And I don't know. Part of me is sort of like, okay, they're terrible parents. They should have told their daughters what was going to happen before they go to school. But then again, like, if you tell them not to do something and they're going off to be adults for the first time, they're probably just going to do it anyway. So they take the kind of easy, cowardly way out, knowing that there are most likely still going to be consequences.
So here's what's interesting to me, because cannibalism, or just meat eating in general, is taboo in this family.
It's the greatest taboo of humanity, I think, right? It's that incest.
Let's sure.
You're not wrong.
I think the fact that it's actually, I think that it's cannibalism is sort of arbitrary, other than I think that's sort of, all right, I see what you're saying. I think there might be a reason it's there. It's the greatest taboo there is. All right.
I don't know that it's about cannibalism, though.
I'll think about that.
Yeah.
No, I think it's about, someone compares humans to animals at some point. And that kind of recontextualized the whole like hunger situation for me. But anyway, I think it's interesting that this is something that's the whole family participates in, yet it's also taboo, not just to the outside world, but within the family, other than the sister who is trying to welcome little sister into that world. And again, like thinking about, because like I have siblings who are much younger than me. They listen to the show, so shout out. And it's like, it's kind of difficult to think about like within a family what you're modeling when it comes to being an adult or being hedonistic. It's like what am I modeling about alcohol or drugs or the way to behave, or like, do you talk about sex? Do you not talk about sex? Like my family, we don't talk about sex. Everyone's probably having it or trying to have it, but it's just not spoken about. And again, I feel like I think that's kind of what this movie is getting at. Like there's a world of adult experiences out there beyond the curtain, and it's inevitable that you're going to explore them. Mm-hmm. But how do you feel about that, and how do the people around you feel about it? I don't know.
Well, you were talking about the second puberty thing, and like I think that's universal. Where this movie is maybe more specific is like every family has their own hangups. They have their own subjects that they don't talk about that ends up like potentially kind of holding back one's development. And for this family, it's this taboo that they don't talk about, but it makes their struggle to integrate into this new kind of environment alienating, more so than it would be for just kind of the average anxious 18-year-old going off to college.
Mm-hmm. But it's of a piece with like the cannibalism is just a facet of something that we see going on with like the partying and the sex too. Like there's just an awakening on all these vectors happening at once. Mm-hmm. And the cannibalism is the most extreme example. But there's, I mean, I think the sexual awakening is maybe more significant than the eating meat development.
I was going to go in a similar direction to what you were just saying about the cannibalism as just one piece of all this, because it's interesting to me the way it's sort of revealed that this runs in the family and that she is not unique. You know, there is that shocking scene where Justine's sister's finger gets cut off while she's trying to give Justine a Brazilian that goes wrong. Mm-hmm. And the sister is, all things considered, fairly blasé about the fact that she wakes up from her shock to see Justine eating her finger. And then after she gets out of the hospital, takes Justine to go essentially kill a guy in a car accident that they cause. And the sister just starts eating brains. This was another moment where I ran the movie back and was like, wait, what did I just see? Did they really just tell me the sister is also a cannibal? Sure enough. And same later on with the kind of shocking reveal that the mom at least is also a cannibal. Because this movie, the open question it leaves for me is, how much farther does this go? Is it even limited to the family? Because there's an interesting thing here where, again, she thinks she's unique. She's not. And it's just, yep, you got to participate in the rituals that allow you to survive in the world, and you'll find your own solution. And I mean, I think probably textually, if you asked Ducournau, she would probably, and again, it sounds like she's not given to make definitive statements on her movies, but I think probably it is intended that only the family is actually cannibals. But to me, it kind of fit into the broader theme to go, well, who's to say? You know, there's so much kind of like, frankly, like evil afoot at this school. Like the rituals they're forced to partake in are fucked up. There's so much fucked up shit going on at this school. And who's to say everybody else isn't also just fucking eating people out there?
I think the cannibalism is more like a generalized disposition, like, you know, like depression running in the family. Like, yeah, I don't think we're supposed to wonder like, oh, are there other cannibals? And like, why are they cannibals? And where does it come from? It works so well as a metaphor, the way that she handles it, because she doesn't probe that. which is oddly similar to Bones and All too. But that's a film where like there is no metaphor. It's just like it is what it is. Don't ask questions, and it works similarly with a different mindset. But I kind of like that.
It's interesting to me that, you know, even though our hero, and especially her sister, well, not the sister, but it's interesting to me that the hero goes so far down this road of indulging these things, but seems repulsed by it the whole time. She doesn't give herself permission to eat meat, really. It's always something that like she'll do, but she doesn't want to confront the fact that she does it. It's a guilty pleasure. And I think the answer to that is when she talks to her dad, and maybe that's the reason the movie ends at that point, is because she finally, even though she looks appalled, I think maybe she's finally getting permission to be okay with how she is. And I think there's something to be said about family in that too. That like, you know, like it's the old universal thing of like, who has authority over you? Are you ever going to escape your parents, etc.? Are you ever going to be your own person? And on some level, it might be kind of pessimistic because does she ever become her own person in this movie? Or does she just allow herself to follow in the footsteps of her parents? I don't know.
I think she just has a necessary awakening, and then she's got to go back to school and figure it out and go on with the next stage of her journey, which is why I think the ending like is so interesting, because I couldn't put my finger on it until you just said that, Chris, but like there's something about that final moment with the father and like his expression and how bright and colorful that moment is shot too, that is almost kind of comforting. He's finally able to say what he's probably wanted to say to his daughter for a while, which is, I think you're going to be okay. Like I've made it this far. I had you, I've raised you. Yeah, your sister's in prison for murder, but he's like, you'll find a solution.
That is fascinating.
And like, what else can you say as a parent? What else can you really say?
I thought
when your kid's fucked up.
I thought that was such a depressing ending, and I thought to me it read as, yeah, life's fucked up, kid, and you're gonna find an equally fucked up way to get through it. You know, as a man who has been like torn apart by his own wife for God knows how many years, like reveals a chest full of scars from that. It was deeply unsettling. I did not find that. I also took issue earlier when I think it was Chris said that was comic. I didn't see anything light, comic, or comforting about that ending, which is another point where it's like, it's interesting. We all loved this movie and all like clearly saw it in such completely different ways, which is fascinating.
I mean, it's kind of a Rorschach blot, I think.
Yeah.
We probably shouldn't talk about it too much more unless we reveal things about ourselves.
Oh, we're going to be psychoanalyzed to death after this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to start like a psychoanalysis thread in the Discord, whatever they call that channel in the Discord. Psychoanalyze us. Analyze this. That's what it'll be called. I feel like theoretically you could talk about this movie almost infinitely.
I think you could, because I think it exists in this weird space where like it is, there's something kind of amorphous about it. Like I think you could take any scene or any idea in this film and yeah, explore it infinitely. But where are we going to get by doing that?
Here's one sort of sub theme or thread, I don't know, in this movie that intrigued me was there's a lot of stuff about animals. Okay, obviously it takes place at a fucking veterinary school. You've got obviously the vegetarianism. There's feeding on both animal and human flesh, and there's a lot of discussion about animals. There's the dog who gets put down, who gets which is
hilarious. It's heartbreaking, but it's hilarious.
I laughed this time around. I thought it was funny.
What?
Yes. Like,
what did you guys laugh at?
It's just
dark,
so
disturbed,
but it's funny. And then you see the family at the end of the movie, and they have some other dog in the kitchen.
But okay, so we should explain this. So the dog gets framed essentially for the sister's finger getting cut off,
And I think everybody knows
just it being just it being chewed up, because the finger gets cut off through an accident, but our hero chews it up, and they put down the dog because they blame the dog for chewing up the finger. And I think the parents, or I don't know if they attribute it to a vet or it's their own interpretation. They say once the dog has a taste for human flesh, it's a bad dog. It's always gonna eat people, which maybe they're projecting.
Yeah, talk about like talking around the problem. I really liked that moment this time around too, where I'm like, oh my god, you guys are gonna have the heaviest conversation in a few days. You just can't quite get there yet.
To answer your question, even though I think maybe you only got half out.
Do we ever get more than halfway through any point on this podcast without being interrupted?
I think the animal thing, it's trying to use, I think, animal nature as a metaphor. And saying that, listen, you got the instinct, you got the programming to do certain things, behave in certain ways, just like a dog, just like all the farm animals, whatever. And you can only deny your animal instincts for so long. And the animal wants sex, it wants food, it wants beer, it wants cigarettes. Mm-hmm. It wants to play the lottery.
I think that's all true. I think also it kind of fit into my overarching thesis about sort of social ritual, because animals are low class citizens in this movie, and Justine is very sensitive to animals' plight. Like, we see a horse being prepared for, I think, some sort of surgery or a veterinary procedure early on. Mm-hmm. And it's fairly gruesome, I think, to the casual observer. The horse is trussed up. It's got a tube shoved down its throat. Its tongue is yanked out of its mouth, whatever. And this is all standard, I think, veterinary procedure. It's not anything cruel happening to the horse, but it looks fucking rough. And she is clearly kind of freaked out. And I sensed a lot of compassion for the horse on her behalf. And we've got the dog, who is just pretty callously framed again for this finger being chewed up and put down for that reason. And overall, it kind of fit into what I saw as this vision of a social food chain. Because again, we've got the upperclassmen at the school who just sort of enforce their authority with like sort of a military brutality at times, and force all the underclassmen into these rituals and peer pressure them into sex and drinking and all this stuff. And to me, it kind of fit into that thing of like, you gotta be average, you gotta participate in the rituals and take your place on the food chain, or else you're gonna get fucking put down like Quickie the dog,
Poor Quickie. Well, she's even told this by that fucking dick professor of hers too, who's like, I don't like students like you, that, because he knows that her parents went through, and she turns in her first assignment. He's like, oh, I already see a mistake, off to a bad start. And he's constantly trying to put her in her place. And there's a whole drama about cheating and him, I don't know who actually cheated in that situation, but he's trying to get her to take the blame for it, to take her down a peg, and sort of keep her in line with the rest of the society in this school. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot to explore there that I haven't really thought about deeply.
And I think that also is the origin of kind of the really sad tone that I got out of the ending. Was the implication was, yeah, you'll find someone you can chew on, essentially. Mm-hmm. You're going to find someone that you can essentially take advantage of to maintain your place on the food chain. The literal food chain.
That's all I'm looking for in this life.
So I don't want to object to your thematic interpretation, because it's your interpretation.
You can object. It might be wrong. I mean, it's probably wrong.
Here's why that social pressure take doesn't work for me. I don't think that the fraternity or whatever it is that's imposing all this stuff on the kids, I don't think it has any power over our little protagonist. I think it's just sort of the environment she's in, but I don't think she does much to appease them, to make them happy. She does eat the rabbit kidney, but she doesn't want to do it, and she almost doesn't do it. She does it because her sister gives it to her. And then later on, I think she's asked about it, and she's like, it's implied that actually it was her decision. Like she could have said no, but she didn't want to say no. And I don't think we have any example of her.
Well, but that goes back to the thing with the doctor. You know, the fat girl could have spoken up, but she didn't because she wanted to be average. She wanted to fit in. Like that. Okay. That is exactly. I think that actually plays exactly into what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is that you don't have to go along with the evil empire necessarily. You just do it because it's too scary to fall out of line.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
I read that moment more as like an indictment on the way that women are treated by the medical system. I still hear crazy stories where people are telling, well, go have a glass of wine, you'll be fine, in fucking 2023. And I saw this as like this doctor seeing vapors. Like a young... I saw this as like a doctor seeing this young, fragile female who's afraid to ask for help and like kind of encouraging her by giving her an example. But, I mean, there are a million other ways you could read that too. I think that's just one of them. It also could have to do with this whole hierarchical thing.
The road she goes down with the hazing doesn't lead her to anything that she doesn't like intrinsically. And often she likes it more than she's supposed to, according to the fraternity, I think.
What do you mean that she doesn't like intrinsically?
Because, like, what do they inspire her to do? They put her in a room with their guy and they're like, you know, have sex with this guy. And she's like, I'm not into this, but actually I'm having some feelings that I am very into when I'm doing this. I'm going to go explore those on my own. And next thing you know, I'm looking in the mirror wearing the possession dress, trying to be hot, listening to a song that makes WAP sound like a fucking fairy.
Oh my God. That's the dirtiest fucking song I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Wasn't the chorus, I will fuck the dead?
Yeah.
Forget 69. I want 666.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to me that felt like she was kind of like play acting, like what she felt social pressure to do at that point. Like the way she dances is so awkward, and I don't know.
She's just
that all seemed very off.
I think she was feeling herself.
I think she's just kind of this whole movie is her starting to kind of gradually come into her own. And I took that scene. So I heard this on another podcast. I didn't even look this up myself, but apparently that the artist who recorded that song, their like mission is to sing like pop and hip hop songs about men the way that men sing about women. And I think it's very meaningful. There's a lot of really interesting needle drops in this movie, but I think it's very meaningful that like that's the song she's listening to in that moment as she's kind of starting to embrace what she is becoming or realizes that she is, and kind of having fun on her own terms, which is awkward, of course, because that involves, you know, mutilating people, which society generally shuns. But
so you guys think this is like a beautiful story of empowerment?
Mm-hmm.
I do, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
I don't think anything is imposed on her other than having to wear a straight face and not eat people. But like the whole through line of, oh, she's hazed into eating meat. No, she wants to fucking eat that meat. She's probably wanted to eat that meat since she was a baby. This is a story of her looking for the permission to eat the meat, to have the sex, to party, etc. And at the end of the movie, I think she finds the permission.
Wow.
She finds the permission and gets the support from her family, or at least what little they can offer.
This is wild. I could not disagree more.
Well, hey.
I don't think
you're welcome.
Different experiences.
Yeah. Wow.
Different life experiences, maybe.
Wild.
This is definitely a movie where I would love to have at least one female perspective on
this show. Not on my show, damn
it.
Let's watch it again in 2 years and have a panel of a more diverse panel.
Sure.
I'll commit to that right now. I love this movie. And that's about as much time as I need before I'll be ready to see it again.
I mean, the sister like coerces her into like wearing the sexy dress and the heels and all that. Like that is not something she intrinsically wants to do.
But
the drinking is not something that feels good to me in this movie either. When she's drinking like a literal like fucking 16 ounce a pint glass full of vodka, that ain't right.
You remember how you drank when you first started, though? I think we all do.
Yeah, and that was not good.
To get your legs.
And it was not good.
Get your legs before you enjoy it, and make it so that you're in bed with somebody before you're passing out and puking. It takes time. This is her first week.
The look on her face, I don't know. None of that's good. It's bad news bears, as Chris would say.
Here's what I am curious about, though, and it does relate to that drinking scene, is the viral video scene I'm still turning over in my mind. Because, one, I don't understand why her sister did several things in this film, except that I guess she's only... How much older is she? She's probably a semester... or a year advanced.
She reads as like 4 years older, 3 years older. So she's pretty older.
Yeah, but she's still pretty immature and like petty, and seems to have a lot of
she's
playing a lot of mind games. She's terrible. Yeah,
she's awful.
And I'm glad she winds up in prison at the end of the movie and gets her just desserts. But
we could probably do a whole another hour on her journey and what that all means.
Mm-hmm.
It might, I'll say with regard to the viral video thing, because for the people who aren't watching the movie for some reason, they're just listening to us. Her reputation at school, our hero's reputation at school, is damaged because there's a video going around of her at one of these crazy Blade raves, and she is wasted out of her mind, being taunted by her sister, who's holding a piece of meat over her.
She's holding the arm of a corpse in the morgue.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, at that point, it was just another piece of meat. But yeah, the arm of a cadaver, and our hero is like just trying to eat this like a dog, lunging for it. So why did she do that in front of all those people? That might speak to, that might be a point for Patrick, because maybe the sister is, she has her allegiances to the cliques and the power system and what gives her buy-in with the social scene, rather than her family. But I think for our hero, it's the opposite. I think for our hero, it's family over social scene.
Is the reason that she does that in front of all the people?
Well, she is powerless. Our protagonist, I almost called her Titan. Justine is...
she's blasted.
She's not only blasted, but like whatever like... machinations
she cannot
that propel her desire for flesh, but like she literally turns into an animal in that moment. It's beyond being wasted. She's like on her hands and knees like an animal. Her eyes are wild, and she can't help herself because she's being teased with this kind of carrot on a stick. I don't understand. Well, but then again, there's the consequences to that don't seem to be great, because they both remain in school after that, after they've committed a literal crime of like pulling this corpse out of its holding area and trying to get this girl to eat it. I don't know.
Which is where I'm like, and again, I don't think this is like canonical. I don't think this is like actually, but it's where it still leads my mind to go like, who's to say this is all that shocking? Who's to say there aren't a bunch of other fucking cannibals at this school?
Well, that's where the cannibalism as a metaphor comes in, because like people are like, they're not as not okay with what happened as you would think, like if this were to happen in reality, right?
Yes.
But I still don't think it's a world where like cannibals are like a known issue running rampant in France.
Well, yeah. No, I think but the point is there's so much cruelty that is just part of social norm in this movie, and cruelty that is just accepted and just the way things are.
New theory that I just thought of 30 seconds ago. But there's a little bit of a rivalry between these sisters, and the older sister is like kind of getting too close to the roommate. I think it's significant that the roommate kills and partially eats, or the sister kills and partially eats the roommate right after he has sex with the little sister.
Mm.
And so maybe part of this movie is the sister trying to establish herself in a pecking order, or possibly feels threatened because she's already bought into this school culture. Maybe she doesn't like having a little sister who's like answers to herself more than the culture and is becoming hot shit on her own terms. I don't know. Just a theory.
They are playing this. They are playing this interesting jealousy game of who's going to fuck the gay guy first, which I still don't know how I feel about. But you could be onto something there, Chris. Yeah, that older sister Alexei sees Justine coming into her own and has to, confront it and make it uncomfortable at all costs.
But also lots of mirror metaphors, face metaphors. Our hero and the older sister are the same.
That's a dank shot. Yeah, when she goes to see.
Oh my God!
Justine goes to visit Alexia in prison at the end, and their faces are melded together in the reflection of the glass. And I actually did read one think piece before we recorded tonight.
I thought it was the face from the end of Skinamarink.
This piece asserted, and again, this is another one of those things where was it intended or not? But this piece, their take was. That it looks most like the mom's face at first and then kind of separates out into the two sisters' separate faces. So that's a whole other level there.
They took the two actresses and put their faces over each other at 50% opacity and then took it to a casting agent and said, find me a middle-aged woman who looks like this.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's also the scene where they're sitting, they're playing Nintendo or whatever, and they're sitting like 2 feet away from each other. But when you don't see them in the same shot, they're framed so that like one's on the extreme left with empty space to the right, and one's on the right with empty space to the left.
Guys, do we ever see him in the same shot? What if this is a Jacob's Ladder scenario?
You could go on for another hour about it, I'm sure.
Guys, to change the subject completely and probably start landing this plane. An interesting thing about me? I've never fucking seen Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, me neither.
And every time someone says it's a Jacob's Ladder scenario, I know like vaguely what they mean. I know it's a big rug pull of some sort related to identity, but I literally don't know what that means. And it's so strange because it's such just like a cultural touchstone. It's so odd, not only that I haven't seen the movie, but that I don't know what it means, what like the twist is. And I'm glad about that, because whenever I do see it, hopefully I'll enjoy it. But yeah, odd thing, especially for me as someone who loves movies and specifically horror movies.
It's a great movie, and I also used Jacob's Ladder scenario improperly just then. I have to admit that is not anything like what happens in Jacob's Ladder.
You were thinking maybe
the twist
it's a Fight
is still
Club
preserved.
Scenario.
Yeah, it's more of a Fight Club scenario. That's more accurate.
Well, no, wait. Actually, maybe I do know. The guy's been dead the whole movie or something, right? Like, it's all his,
it's an occurrence at
dying...
Owl Creek Bridge filtered through Vietnam, from what I remember.
An occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge.
Yeah, and it's basically that, but as a, like, Vietnam vet's story. That? That's who the fuck wrote that? Like, everybody reads that in middle school.
He doesn't even know who wrote An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge.
Do you? Are you Googling it right now? I don't remember. Ambrose Bierce wrote An Occurrence.
Do you know what that is, Chris? Or are you trolling?
Heard of this before in my life. I feel like Jacob's Ladder is infinitely more popular than this short story that Steven just used to explain Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, interesting, because it was like adapted into a Twilight Zone episode in the original series, I think. Famous story about somebody who is maybe dead during the duration of the story.
It's a good ignoramus. Don't listen to me.
Well, that's Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, that's An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge.
That's An Occurrence at Owl Creek
Guys,
Bridge.
What are we watching next week? I think it's Patrick's turn to choose.
Yes.
It is.
Choose wisely.
Well, so last episode, we had this whole thing with the Joker where we were like, you guys will never believe this. We meme about this all the time.
Are we watching Joker?
No. We are going to watch a movie that at least you, Chris, meme about all the time. Do you want to try? Do you want to guess what we might be watching? Yeah.
Ouija Origin of Evil.
Nope.
What?
Not Shooter, not Ouija Origin of Evil. We're watching The Bye-Bye Man.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi to The Bye-Bye Man.
Don't think it. Don't say it.
Is that the tagline?
Yes, that's the tagline.
I don't know anything about it other than that you just like reference it anytime there's a movie that's like the blank man.
Yeah, or anytime there's just a movie that's like just your sort of. I'm expecting. I hope I'm wrong. I'm expecting this to just be like the most generic, written by an AI Blumhouse dead teenager movie.
Yeah, I was. There are other things I certainly want to see more, but I was looking at the selections today and I was like, all right, we've talked about the Bye Bye Man for like whenever it came out, we've talked about it for that number of years. And it's like, it's time to get this done.
I think it's the reason people didn't see The Empty Man because of the dumb title thing. Guys, Faye Dunaway's in this movie.
Oh,
my favorite. I got the big crush on her if you turn back the clock 60 years. All right, well until then, bye man.
Bye man.
Really, that the Biden man.
Okay, bye for real.
It's a man. He goes bye.
All right. That's the end of this show. We'll be back in 2 weeks to watch the Bye Bye Man. Oh, God. It's just such a funny name. Until then, for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Steven.
Bye-bye.